Thank you for being here today. Thank you for the introduction, Carolyn. And also, I want to thank Jennifer, but it was Tracy who couldn't be here today, who invited me to do the speech. But I also have to mention a few things. Bob and I have now been in Oak Ridge for about 2.5, almost 3 years. And during that time, I've had a great chance to get involved in some organizations. Roane State Community College, where they are the ones videotaping today. I'm on their foundation board, and also Oak Ridge City Schools Public Foundation Board, and our wonderful Emory Valley Center, and Jennifer Anderson is one of your past presidents. I think Jennifer is a great leader, and also Janet Wood, who's with her. So I'm sure you've heard a lot about Emory Valley. If you hadn't, you must invite Jennifer to do a special presentation because it's so meaningful. I had the privilege of addressing Altrusa a year ago, which led to an invitation to speak to the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. So if anybody has any connection out there, I'm always looking for other engagements, but it was so fun to do something locally and to get an invitation from Dolly Parton. I thought that was really cool. But all the people I've mentioned are wonderful leaders. But today's presentation is about leadership lessons from some unlikely sources. And I'm going to tell you some stories. Kieran Egan from Simon Fraser University has said, the mind organizes best in story form. Sorry, mathematicians, but the mind organizes best in story form. And because I used to be a preschool and kindergarten teacher, I'm going to use some props. So between the props and the stories, we'll hope we get a chance to remember these points. But some leadership lessons from some unlikely sources. This is one of my props. It's a key, but it was a key that I gave to my President's Council at the University of Memphis, because this kind of key signifies trust and integrity. But how do we develop this trust and integrity? Well, of course, a lot is from family, from our past work experiences, and also from the values that we hold dear. I grew up on a farm, as Carolyn mentioned, and I can relate to the indoor plumbing that was supposed to be a joke. But picked cotton with my dad, and my dad was a pretty good taskmaster. In fact, he said, this is a business. We're in it to run a good business and make a good home for you and the children, and you are expected to work. And of course, if you slacked off at all, he would say, now, are you doing your work, or are you getting the younger brothers to do your work? So he always called me to task if I wasn't quite performing. You can imagine he had an 8th grade education and wasn't too hot on higher education, if you want to know the truth. But years later, when I was inaugurated as president of the University of Memphis, of course, Mom and Dad came. They came to the luncheon that was held in my honor, and of course they were there. And at that time, Governor Phil Bredesen was there. My dad, not used to speaking to governors, I think Phil Bredesen was the first one he met, leaned over to Phil at the luncheon and said, Phil, you know, I don't know what university presidents do, but she'll give you a good day's work. You know, I almost cried, because that's how he viewed the world. Do you give a good day's work? And my President's Council at the University of Memphis had that trust and integrity, which they earned from giving a good day's work. And among the 2,500 employees we had at the university, there were many who gave a good day's work that we counted on, but it is also from those deep-seated values that we earn the trust and integrity of others. And in fact, when I meet people, sometimes I have a sense of trust and integrity right away. Sometimes it takes a while because of our perceptions sometimes are skewed, because we may be perceiving people a little bit differently than they really are. But over time, we grow to trust people of integrity. So the very first lesson of leadership, the one that is associated with this key, is trust and integrity. The next keys I want you to think about are these keys. Now, these are the keys that got me here today. The keys to my Lincoln. It's a 2009 Lincoln. I may have to go to my banker and borrow money to get a new Lincoln. These, I'm not talking about your Toyota or your Honda or your Lincoln that got you here. What are the things about you that got you here? Is it your drive? Is it your knowledge, your skills? Is it your determination? Tenaciousness, perseverance? What is it that got you to where you are in this place in life with your position today? What got you there? And of course, the last one is your abilities to work well with others. That's what gets many people into leadership roles. Sometimes they're in leadership roles because they're so brilliant. But that brilliant person may not last if she or he does not have that ability to work well with others. Because it takes a team of people to make anything work. So, one of the other things I want to say about the keys, the car, the vehicles that got you here, is simply that don't let the people on your team leave their keys in their car. We have a lot of people appointed to teams that don't bring themselves and their determination, their skills, and their knowledge into the team. And we need to be encouragers to help them do that. Now, I want to tell you a story that reminds me of this. It's about Teresa, who was a speech therapist in a large medical metropolitan complex. She's a member of the joint therapies team. There are physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, mental health therapists. They're all a part of this team. And I had lunch with her one day, and she came in and she threw her keys on the table. And I said, "What's wrong with you?" And she said, "I'd turn in my keys tomorrow if I could get rid of her." And I said, "What is going on?" And she said, "I have a supervisor who is terrible. She criticizes people all the time. She incites gossip in the front office. When we have group meetings, she brings everybody down by being super critical of what we suggest. And sometimes with her decisions goes against what we do." And I said, "Well, I don't think she'll last." She said, "I'm not going to last. I'm looking for a new job. I don't care how much it pays. I need to get out of here or I won't be sane." Well, a few months later, fast forward, had lunch with her again, and she said, she came in with a smile and said, I said, what's with it? You don't look like the same person." And she said, "I'm not. I'm happy." I said, "Happy at work?" She said, "Yes." She said, "I have a new boss. I have a new supervisor. She listens. We make a lot of joint decisions about our patients' therapies. But the reality is a lot of people experience those kinds of bosses. There is a Gallup study about employee engagement. The Gallup study says that 35% of workers would forego their next pay raise to have a new boss. And only 65% of companies in America, 65% of companies in America have what is called a high rate of employee engagement. So we have some work to do on leadership and helping people to be good leaders in whatever environment they find themselves. This, Teresa's story and her good ending reminded me of this leadership lesson. This is a leadership lesson from Teresa. It's actually written by William Arthur Ward, and for those of you who go to First Methodist, I heard this in a sermon by Troy Forster, who now is at First Methodist in Knoxville. Here's the leadership lesson from Teresa. Flatter me, and I may not believe you. Criticize me, and I may not like you. Ignore me, and I may not forgive you. Encourage me, and I will never forget you. And I added this last little phrase. Ward didn't say this. In my notes I wrote, and I will go the distance with you. I will go the distance with you. That's how valuable encouragement can be, and that's the leadership lesson from Teresa. Well, I have some more keys. These are the keys I use every day. There's what I used, past tense, every day when I was at the University of Memphis. These keys were the key to my building, the key to the outer office, and the key to the inner office where I worked. Those were my everyday keys. I'm going to suggest that these keys are symbolized by communication, cooperation, and collaboration. I could not have used these keys at the University of Memphis without communication, cooperation, and collaboration. And I have a little story to tell you about each of these. My first provost, and provost for 10 years with me, was a mathematician named Ralph. Ralph thought if he, and I have permission to tell this story, by the way. Ralph thought if he sent out one email giving a direction to the faculty, it'd be followed. Well, it wasn't. And he said, what's going on? He'd never been a provost before. He said, what's going on? I said, we have to have a lot more communication than that. We have to have emails, we have to have small group meetings, we have to have large group meetings, and, Ralph, we're going to have to integrate these meetings. We can't separate the faculty from the staff and the hourly workers from the professional staff. We have to have some meetings where groups of people are together and they hear each other for us to decide on this major new initiative. We have to communicate it in many ways. The strangest request from the campus, they thought, was that they have mixture across divisions. This division didn't talk to that division, you know? Does anybody know that, or am I just making this up? Okay, well, so communication. So Ralph and I learned to be good communicators. And we learned to work together across all these divisions. Now I want to tell you a cooperation story really fast that's symbolized by these keys. And this is the red hat story. Now this is not Donald Trump's red hat. This is the red cap story. We were graduating more students from the University of Memphis, and we had to replace all those students. You know, you increase your graduation rate, well, you also have to go out and recruit more people to enter your university. So we had a very successful recruitment fair that we did every spring, and as we looked at the strategies that we used for recruitment, that was one of the best. So we decided to change from one recruitment fair to 3. Well, a recruitment fair means a lot of setup and takedown. It means a big meal. It means the fountain has to work. It means that the bandstand has to be set up, and the musicians have to be there, and there's a big production in Rose Theater. So we needed the cooperation of a lot of people, the music people, the physical plant people, and of course music people love to perform, so we had no trouble getting them. But the physical plant people, my outer office said, Dr. Raines, I don't think they're very happy with you. I said, why? Don't they understand how important these recruitment fairs are? If we don't get our students, what that would mean, there aren't enough jobs, we'll have to lay people off, we've got to use this for our budget. She said, no, they don't understand that, Dr. Raines, nobody's ever told them. And so, I went to the physical plant people and I invited them to the Rose Theater and I told them why we needed to have 3 recruitment fairs instead of 1, that we had a graduation rate, we needed to place the students, and how important that was for our budget, and I did the budget breakdown. Nobody had ever presented the budget breakdown to the physical plant people. As we were leaving, one engineer from physical plant said, was heard to say by me, well, I'm an engineer, and I did not take on this job to put up tables and chairs. So I said, I was just about to go over, and this woman said, well, I'm going to be there, and my whole team is going to be there, and I'll tell you why. I heard what she said. I want to add some people to my team, and if we don't grow the budget, we're not adding, we're cutting. He said, well, you're right. And groused. Then we had 3 very successful recruitment fairs. But on the and I had told them in the meeting, I'll be there for the setup and I'll be there for the takedown of the meeting. And I was there every time. And I did lots of emceeing and I did lots of talking to parents and all the kinds of things you have to do to orchestrate a big event. I went into the last event of the 3rd recruitment fair at the Rose Theater, and all these physical plant people were lined up in the back of Rose Theater, and I thought, what are they doing? They need to be out there taking down all this stuff. And the guy in the red hat said, Dr. Raines, did we get our numbers? Dr. Raines, did we get our numbers? And I said, I'm sorry. I don't know the answer to that because the students have to still enroll. But we had the best turnout for the recruitment fair we've ever had. But I tell you what I did do. I said, I don't know right now, but I will know and I'll let you know. And I sent an email directly to Mr. Redcap and all of Physical Plant, because I needed their cooperation for this to work, and they gave it to me. But I then began treating them much more integrated into the whole fabric of the university from that experience. And now collaboration, I can tell you, in my inner office, we made a lot of gut-wrenching decisions, and all of you know what those are. It's either about budget or people, resources or programs. You know that's what it is. But I counted on that inner circle of the vice presidents and the directors to stay with me through this process and make sure that we didn't divide into our silos again. Because for a new program to work, it had to be academic affairs and IT. It had to be IT and business and finance. It had to be communications, marketing, and fundraising with academic affairs. People who hadn't normally worked together. But with this President's Council, they did, thank God, do what I ask. And so I would say to you, a leadership lesson is, as leaders, we must choose to use the keys of communication, cooperation, and collaboration every day for the sake of our mission, to value our colleagues, for our own job satisfaction, and to stay inspired to continue to lead. And stay inspired to continue to lead. Well, also in my inner office was a student intern named Adam. Adam came to us as a freshman. When he graduated as a senior, we gave him a party. And when he graduated, Adam gave us a present. And the present is this framed saying. It is, He said, Dr. Raines, here's what I've learned in the president's office. Happiness is doing with a smile what you have to do anyway. He also added, he said, I didn't think this would look very good on a plaque, but he also added, without bitching and moaning. Well, that's a lesson from Adam, the student intern at the University of Memphis. Okay, so I learned another leadership lesson, and I learned this leadership lesson by what this purse represents. Isn't that the god-awfulest looking thing you've ever seen? It was given to me by Rita Sparks, the wife of the chairman of the Board of Visitors at the University of Memphis. And we were on a retreat to Florida, paid for by the Board of Visitors, not by me or the university, and all these people, and they asked me to give a state of the university. Well, most of these people had enough money to buy a building if they wanted to. And so when I made my speech, I talked about the state of the university, all the problems, what the budget was, where the legislator has cut us, how few students we had in this major or that major. If we didn't get more, we'd have to cut microbiology. So I chose all of the programs that they had, like the Plow Foundation had a lot of interest in microbiology. So I was working the room and telling them how desperate it was, Mark White, how desperate the budget was. And at dinner that night, the wife of the Board of Visitors came to me and gave me this purse. And you can't see it, but you can see it up there. This purse says, put your big girl panties on and deal with it. That's the lesson from Rita, and that's the leadership lesson. You're in charge, deal with it. So I've kept this purse. I don't carry it, but I have kept it because it reminds me of the great leadership lesson from Rita. So, now for those of you who are learners, here's a couple of things you could learn from. There's a great book by Dwayne Cummings called The Sensational Salesman, A Second Chance Story. I like it a lot. There's another book by Jeremy Kubicek and Steve Cockrum. Steve Cockrum was in Knoxville a couple of weeks ago for a luncheon, and I heard him also at the LeaderCast conference, and his voice, their book is called 5 Voices, How to Communicate Effectively with Everyone You Lead. And I also recommend the LeaderCast videos. I'll say it, truth in lending here. They recorded me, and I have a video called Advice for Women Leaders. So that was kind of neat to be recorded and to have that played on the internet pretty regularly. And many of you know Sandy Smith, and he does great seminars here. And I'm hoping to publish my leadership book, From Preschool Teacher to University President, Leadership Insights. I'm kind of toying with changing the title to Leadership Lessons, especially after this presentation today. So the leadership lesson is also always be a learner. With every leadership challenge comes the challenge of continuing to be a learner. But for those of you astute people in this room, when I put up the slide of the keys, you notice that I talked about 3 of the keys, but there were 4 keys. Well, frankly, this little key, I haven't the foggiest notion what it unlocks, and I bet if you took out your key rings, you would find that to be true too. That lots of us have that. And I also have to tell you, Nancy Stanley, where is she? Nancy, when I moved into the house on Dansworth where we live, but packing up to move, I found a whole drawer full of keys in Memphis that I hadn't the foggiest notion what lock. But I hated to take this one off my key ring because I was afraid I might encounter the lock, that it might open someday. And so it stayed on my key ring. But I'm calling this key the key of inspiration. You can't stay a leader. take on new leadership roles unless you stay inspired. Something has to keep you going, Jennifer. You have to stay inspired, and the inspiration may come from many ways, but what you cannot do as a leader is to lose this inspiration key. Because if you lose your inspiration key, you're going to lose your followers. Because leadership requires inspiration. So, friends, we have all these keys. My dad taught a leadership lesson. Teresa taught a leadership lesson. My presidents taught a leadership, my vice presidents taught a leadership lesson. The man in the red hat taught me a leadership lesson. There are leadership lessons everywhere. What we do have to pay attention to is that we support each other as leaders and help everybody to stay inspired. So thank you for being such great listeners.